I have people saying, well, you have to acknowledge that there's issues. There are issues. There are a litany of issues. I respect what NBA players have done for the most part over the last 24 hours. I completely respect, because that is, in fact, the way in which you're supposed to protest. Now, I don't know what is accomplished by it. It is more symbolic in terms of a gesture than anything that truly accomplishes a goal. But I do believe that the symbolism is important. Hey, we're paying attention. Hey, this is unacceptable. Hey, these problems continue to persist. We need to get towards a solution. But I think if we were fair at least I thought fair in my criticism of Colin Kaepernick, I would have the same critique of NBA players, which is, I get that you're upset. I think anybody who watched that video would be upset. I am. But what are the reasonable solutions that you have? What is a reasonable way to approach and make things better? What is it? So I think that most people are reasonable. Television, especially political television, is not reasonable. And oftentimes it plays to the best and worst parts of our brain. We do it in sports. We argue two sides of a debate when the truth is somewhere in the middle. I have people I work with. LeBron James was a choker against the Dallas Mavericks. Okay. Well, then the next year he wasn't a choker against Oklahoma City, or the following year against the Spurs when they came back, and in Game 7, he was incredible. He was the best player on earth. Can you acknowledge both sides? Can you acknowledge that there was a fear maybe of success or of failure? I don't know, against the Mavericks, that somehow for a portion of time he was able to overcome. Those are reasonable discussions to have, but we portray them in an unreasonable black or white sort of manner. And we've done this with politics the whole time. And I caution many of my friends who are in sports media, you get caught up, and players are doing the same thing. Because you become a hypocrite. That's what happened with Steven Jackson, and that's what happens. I'm reasonable with Montrezl Harrell. What Montrezl Harrell said wasn't racist, or nobody in the real basketball world was actually offended by him calling Luka B.A. white boy. No. That's just what's done. You're just challenged. And either you step up to the challenge, which Luka did, or you don't, and you go play a different sport, or you just become a bench player, or you become that guy that everybody knows they can talk trash to. That's all it is. That's reasonable. It's also reasonable to believe that, we don't know, nor will we maybe ever know. Did race play a factor in Kenosha? Why is it that there's an assumption made that race had to play a factor? Why do we automatically go there? Right? Whereas my brain didn't go to racism with Montrezl Harrell. Granted, completely different, I understand. But it's the idea of, where do you go to? Let's talk about LeBron. So the story out of Orlando was last night, LeBron James basically led a somewhat of a player revolt on the rest of the playoffs, walked out. And the Lakers and the Clippers had, in some sort of straw poll, said they didn't want to continue the playoffs. There was a change of tune. Several players apparently spoke with LeBron in the middle of the night, and now he's back playing. LeBron is sort of activist in chief, leader of the movement for the NBA players. And I guess the question becomes, and it's a real question, how are we going to view LeBron when he's done playing? And it's interesting. I think it's a complex story. I don't think it's easy. You know, when we look back at Michael Jordan's career, even through the lens of his own production company, it wasn't like it was the cleanest of lives. Between gambling, they didn't touch the womanizing, you know, how he treated players, how he treated management, how he treated some coaches, all of these things, how he treated opponents. All of these things are part of a complex tale, which has led him to where he is today as the most prominent former player, owner of the Charlotte Hornets. I think LeBron's legacy will be amazing with the school that he's created. And I do understand that there are people who will say, hey, how much of that was his own money? It doesn't matter. It truthfully doesn't matter. Because what comes with being LeBron is the power to make things happen. And you can either make good things happen or bad things happen. And I don't care what you want to say about how he plays or how he shoots, but creating a better place for education and a ramp to a free college experience is an amazing gift. Whether it comes out of his pockets or whether he raises money or whether it's the local school system or however they do it, taxpayer, I don't care. It didn't previously exist. He got on board and he helped make it happen. Right? But I also think, and this is really important, that LeBron's assumed power could be viewed completely differently, not just within the state of Ohio, but otherwise. You know, he campaigned for Hillary Clinton last time. She did not win Ohio. He will campaign against Donald Trump again. And if Trump wins Ohio, I don't think that's there is something to the image we see on TV appears to be kind of bigger than it is in reality, right? Kind of like the rearview mirror. And I think that's kind of where LeBron is a little bit. His power of influence is really, really amazing to watch. But can he influence voters? That's almost a different level of influence. I don't know. I'm intrigued to see how we look at LeBron. You know, Skip Bayless said earlier today on Undisputed that here he is in position to win his fourth title and he was ready to walk away from it. That actually is a powerful statement. I didn't think of it that way. And then when I thought of it, I was like, wow, that really actually would be something. I'm surprised the cynic in Skip or the cynic in me was like, well, maybe he thought he couldn't win a championship, and so that's why he's okay canceling the season. But then I came back around to guys like LeBron, guys who are all-time greats. They think they're going to win every time, no matter what. Losing is not an option in his mind. Look, it's not an option in Kawhi Leonard's mind or Paul George's mind either, but definitely not an option in LeBron James's mind. Like between the Kobe thing and this thing and the Lakers and his legacy all in the line, like in his mind, he's going to win. It's just a question of by how much and who are they going to play on the way to that championship. But I think this is going to be, he's an interesting superstar. And there have been missteps. There have been things he said which I disagree with, but that's okay. Like, that's okay. It's okay to vehemently even disagree with people. That's okay. You know? So, I don't know. What do you think, Music? How are you going to look at LeBron when he's done playing?
Yeah, I think I largely agree with a lot of the things that you said early on there, where what he did with the I Promise schools, even the More Than a Vote campaign that he did to sort of get people to register to vote.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I think those are the things that if you just put your focus on that, as great of a basketball player as he's been, and those type of things are totally commendable, and I think that's what he should be remembered for. I do just think that by nature of him involving himself in these issues and how outspoken he's been on social media on certain political issues, not things like this, but more so just taking direct shots at people like Donald Trump or things like that.
I don't think that's a mistake when he does that.
I would agree. And that's what I was saying is like, those are the things that other people are going to hold against him. But for someone like me, like, I don't care. He can say whatever he wants about the president. It's his right. I'm going to focus on the actual tangible good that he's tried to bring into the world with the education and with the getting people registered to vote. And I think he should be held in a positive light for it.
Yeah, I think here's the thing that I want people to realize. Okay, I am a huge proponent of anyone who gets citizens to register to and out to the polls to vote. I would also say that we got to make sure you understand, one, they don't have to vote for your candidate, right? Like, you can't tell people, hey, get out there and vote, but only vote for our guy, like, or our gal. Like, that's not really the way it's supposed to work. You vote your own conscience, whatever you feel is the best for the country. And it's important to understand the issues that you have. Do they align with the candidate that you're supporting or the party that you're supporting? The perfect example is this. It doesn't get any better than this. Right? If we went through the list of problems with policing in the United States, and I have a good friend who was an athlete, who's now an officer, and we had a long talk a couple weeks ago, and he was kind of taking me through some of the biggest issues in policing. And what he said was, like, look, the guns are a big issue because we have to assume everybody's packing. And they're less trained than we are, and they're gonna get nervous, and maybe they pull a gun, and you got to take somebody down if they pull a gun on you or if they have a gun on somebody else. And it's really, really hard to maintain your composure, even if you've been doing it for years, and he's been doing it for years. The guns are a problem. The accountability for police officers can be a problem as well, not just in walking the blue line and supporting each other, but also the union. The problem becomes you're telling people to vote. And I would say that most NBA players, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you said, hey, when you're telling me to vote, who do you want me to vote for? They would say the Democratic Party, which is the party that is mostly aligned with the unions, right? So there's you're voting for something to be changed. On the other hand, the party that supports a portion of, and I don't know if unions necessarily are the problem as much as how that particular union or most unions react, which is they support all of their union members. Right? Like it happens in the NBA and the NFL, Major League Baseball, union member steps out of line, does something awful. The union has to, I guess, has to support them, has to provide a lawyer for them, has to provide advice for them, has to defend them, even when they're indefensible. That happens with police unions. So at the core of it, and you're right, Ryan, if the core of the legacy he leaves behind is he wanted to get all of his guys he grew up with, into the industry, he succeeded. He wanted to win championships, he succeeded. He changed the fortunes of at least 2 franchises and seemingly has turned around with a lot of help the Lakers, who are in 5 years of despair. He's created a school which is an avenue to college for all of these students. That's leaving the world a better place than you found it. And if even you get even one person to vote, and I'm sure he's gotten more than one person, if you get just one person to vote, regardless of who they vote for, you've accomplished your task. You've gotten people to be responsible for the future of the country. So, yeah, I mean, like, look, there's some things that he said, people that he's aligned with, things that he's done, I could pick apart. Showing up drunk to a Laker game last year with a goblet of wine, I think it's a terrible look for the most known player and maybe the best player in the NBA. It's terrible. But the same way I can say he's a human being. His first year in LA, his first injury, the first time going through all this stuff, he's a human being in his 30s who does like wine, and TV has celebrated his love for wine. Like, he's a human. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to do things I don't agree with. He's going to do things that he now doesn't agree with. Can't believe I did that. Right? But I'm a big, you want to do plus minus, right? Like, the plus minus in the NBA, plus minus in sports. Is the team better because you're on the floor or worse because you're on the floor? What's your plus minus? That's how we should view all of us. I've done stupid things, me personally, lots of them. But I've done some really good things. Really, really good things that I'm really proud of. I've helped people. I'm not a perfect father. I've made some mistakes. I've said some things I wish I hadn't said. I've pushed my kids into things I wish I hadn't pushed. But overall, plus minus is in the plus category. And I can't think that anybody would be reasonable and not think, however you felt like he was too emotional or too charged or too militant last night or whatever. The fact is, his plus minus is pretty high.